My life, I've been until I got back trouble, I've been a wilderness backpacker, a winter camper, winter ski camper and mountaineer, a canoeist, a bird watcher, funny jokes about academics wearing their little tweed hats with field glasses looking at birds. Doonesbury did a lot of jokes about us. Now that I'm here in Florida, I spend as much of my time when I'm not working as I can out in the back bays in my kayak or at the beach with my 12-year-old daughter. And having grown up on the Outer Banks of Carolina as a surfer, I just had a surfboard made and I'm trying to learn to surf again. I run out to the East Coast, get my surfboard, I go out, I catch a wave, and I spend a lot of time falling down dramatically and I've been hit in the head with my surfboard more than a few times, lost a few brain cells. But that's where my kind of commitment to or interest in the environment and sustainability sort of comes from professionally and personally. Cagle?
Yes.
This is my colleague Cagle.
Hello, I am Cagle, so I'm the co-teacher for the class. I'm a PhD candidate over in rhetoric and composition. Come on in, grab a seat anywhere. And I'm actually an advisee of Carl's. I'm finishing up my dissertation this semester and taking a job as a professor at the University of Kentucky starting this fall.
She turned down a couple of other jobs to take a rock and roll job as an assistant professor at the University of Kentucky.
Very excited.
Totally cool.
One of the reasons that I'm really excited is that there's a lot of cool work happening in Lexington, where the University of Kentucky is, around climate change policy, which is what I study and what my dissertation is about. Have any of you heard of the Southeast Florida Regional Climate Change Compact? It's a local policy group here in Southeast Florida. Well, not here. It's Miami-Dade, Broward, that region. So I'm writing my dissertation about that. I'm really interested in climate change communication and policy making, but sustainability and environmental communication and policy more broadly. We're going to talk a lot about that throughout the semester because that's where most of my expertise is. And it's also really relevant right now, right after COP21 that just happened last month. There's a lot happening in the news around communication and climate change and visualization, which is one we'll get to that when we talk about the syllabus, but visualization is another way that we'll talk a lot about climate change in this course. A little bit about my background. I started out as an engineering major back when, and then 2 years in I took a poetry class, and then I quit being an engineer and went and got a poetry degree instead because I hate making money, apparently. But it worked out for the best because I ended up in grad school and found rhetoric, and it's allowed me to combine my passions of language and technical and scientific information, which is what drew me to engineering in the first place. I grew up as a military brat, so I've lived all over. I grew up in England, Germany, and the Netherlands, so not really all over, mostly Western Europe and here. But it feels like a lot of different places, and I had the opportunity to travel really widely. So I was thinking about, as Carl was talking about, where his original interests in the environment and sustainability come from. I think for me it's that, having grown up in so many different places. And in the US, I've lived in the Northeast, I've lived in Las Vegas, I've lived in Tennessee, I've lived here, Alabama, California. So I've had the opportunity to really experience a lot of different environments and think about the ways that the places that we live and the environment that surrounds us shapes our lives and shapes our experiences with each other. And so I think that it's really interesting to me at an intellectual level, but also personally very important because I've had a lot of great opportunities and experiences in nature growing up in all of these different places, and I would really like for that to continue to be a possibility for people in the future. I don't have any kids, I have dogs, so not equivalent, I get that, but so not for my future kids necessarily, but it'd be really nice if we could do a good job of shepherding.
When my dog causes trouble, I just put her outside. I can't do that with a 12-year-old.
No.
Doesn't work.
I think they have laws about that.
Yeah, you can't say go play in the street, honey.
No. So that's a little bit about me and my background and what I do. I'm really, really interested in, outside of the topics of environmentalism and climate change, digital rhetoric. So I do a lot of stuff with new media and social media and internet technologies and modeling technologies, and feminist and disability theory as well. So I bring those perspectives. So that's me.
When we get to the syllabus, you'll understand how this works. But the first half of the course is more my expertise than Cagle's, although not completely. And the second half of the course is more Cagle's expertise than mine, though again, not completely.
Yeah.
My dad always says that there's a martini line. Martinis. If you're under 40, you don't drink martinis. If you're over 40, you drink martinis. Mm-hmm. Well, there's a digital rhetoric line, digital and computer technology line. And if you're under 40, you're in the digital world and you're a digital native, and if you're a couple of decades over 40, you're not a digital native. You know how to wander through, but you're always impersonating a digital native. So we have the non-digital person and the digital person here.
Yeah. If it makes you feel better, Carl, I don't use Snapchat. So. Anyone use Snapchat?
Snap what?
Okay. Yeah. Snapchat. Yeah. I keep meaning to try it and I keep forgetting.
Okay.
So shall we do
Yes.
introductions?
Yes.
We would love to find out who you are. So the standard introduction, if you don't mind. We have a lot of people in the room, so we want to make sure everyone has a chance.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys know everybody, but we certainly don't know.
Yeah.
I know 2 of you, but.
Yeah, I know one. So, the standards, your name, concentration, maybe where you're from, or what you do, if you have current professional experience in sustainability, or what you want to do.
Yeah, what you want to do, what kind of a career, job, work you want to do.
Thank you, sir.
Classroom tech.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. So we can just go in a row. You want to start us off?
This is the last time she's going to sit at the end of the front.
And actually, you know what? While you're doing this, I'm going to pull my laptop out and I'll take attendance. So I might ask you to repeat your name so I can make sure I get you for first day attendance. So, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm from Haiti. My concentration is sustainable tourism. And I guess at first, professionally, I'd like to do some consulting work and help businesses transition towards more sustainable practices. And then eventually I want to own my own something related to tourism. I'm not sure yet, but that's what I want to do.
Sarah, what's your last name?
Jean.
Okay. I just want to make sure I get you on the attendance.
Continue?
Yes.
You don't have to stand up if you don't want to.
Okay.
Just speak loud.
Hello everyone, my name is Lin Hong, and you guys can call me Hong because it's easy to remember. And I come from China. My concentration is entrepreneurship. My father in China worked for global sustainability for engineering. And my father suggested me to choose this major. And my dream is run a business by myself. So my concentration is entrepreneurship. I want to mix up these 2 things and see what kind of thing should happen. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Ji Hye-jung. You can call me Annie, and I'm from South Korea. And my concentration is entrepreneurship, the same as her. And I worked at England, working for the One World Series of Vegetarian Festival. So from that time, I consider about the nature and something. So I came here now.
Hi, I'm Paula. I'm actually a dual concentration in both energy and water. And I'd like to become a sustainable sustainability officer, and in the supply chain management of any company.
Sure.
What just occurred to me as I was listening, would you also tell us what your, and you don't have to back up and do it, what
Unless
your
you want to.
undergraduate major is? You all have a degree in something. Some of you may have master's degrees in something else as well. She has a degree from our English department in rhetoric and professional communication, which is what made me think of this. So you're up.
Well, my name is Pedro Souza. I'm sorry. I'm from Brazil. Well, I've been working with environmental and sustainability for the past 12 years. I've been a sustainability manager, especially for forestry and mining back in Brazil. Now I have a small consulting company. I'm taking the year off. I brought my whole family to the U.S., so everybody's studying. So my background is I have a bachelor in geography, environmental studies. I also have a master in business. So my concentration is renewable energy.
Excellent.
And Pedro, what did you? Oh, I found it. Souza. I gotcha.
My name is Andrea Silva. I'm from Colombia. My background is business administration. And back home, I have worked in a company that works with poor communities and environmental issues. So I just want, with this master, to combine sustainable practices in business And my concentrations are renewable energy, sustainable tourism, and food planning system.
My name is Salintip Patel. I'm from Thailand. My background is environmental science. I'm government officer and I work about policy and plan analysis. My concentration is water pollution. I would like to apply my knowledge to manage in Thailand.
My name is Michelle. It'll be Lauren most on there.
Okay.
I'm from Tampa, and my concentration is sustainable tourism. And I'm still figuring out what I want to do with it, but I just like it all. And then I got my degree in humanities.
Hello, my name is Xing. I'm from China, and I got my bachelor degree in China, majored in agriculture, resources, and the environment. And now I'm studying here, major concentration in entrepreneurship, and I'm trying to put the environmental and the business or something together, and I want to see where we head.
You'll like the lecture week after next. There's a lot of stuff about business and environment.
Hello everyone, my name is Hao Zhang. You can call me Hao. I come from China. My background is engineering. I have no special experience, but I hope I will work about sustainability for China. You know, China is in trouble. Big trouble.
Hi, my name is Elon, or you can call me Aaron. I come from China, and I have a diploma in water sciences and engineering diploma, and right now I'm just beginning with in sustainability. So I think I will concentrate in water, but just
Hey guys, how are you? My name is Osama Tahir and I'm from Pakistan. I did my undergrad in international business from Malaysia as a minor in marketing. And I chose sustainability because it was more challenging than marketing in my opinion. And other than that, I haven't chosen my major yet, but I'm really excited and I hope we can all collectively work on our ambitions. So nice to meet you all.
I'm Joshua Barber. My undergrad degree is in economics. I'm from Daytona Beach, Florida. I'm in the water concentration here, and I'm currently an intern at Sweetwater Organic Farm. And I'm really interested in wildlife restoration in urban areas, especially rivers.
Somebody in the online class is working at Sweetwater too.
Yeah.
Do you know who? I can't remember now.
No.
Sorry. All right. I'll have to look it up. I'll have to look it up.
I don't.
Hi, my name is Sam. I'm from Brandon. My undergrad was in International Studies and Environmental Science and Policy. And my concentration is in water, but I think I'm going to switch over to food systems because I love food.
Everyone, my name is Andy. I think I know about half of you or more. I'm from Belize, Central America. I'm in the tourism concentration. I'm actually on leave from work to do this. I work at the community college and do the tourism courses. And I also am a tour guide back home and I'll be training for the tourism board.
Hello, I'm Jason. I studied sociology and sustainable tourism. My interest for the future is urban planning, infrastructure, stuff like that.
I'm Josh Calero. I was born and raised here in Tampa, Florida. My undergrad is in international studies. When I could not find a good job or a job I liked with that, I looked into this and saw sustainable tourism. Goes perfectly with international studies, so here I am.
My name is Mary Bishop, and I study tourism as well. I'm from Bradenton, Florida, and I hope to get a job working for city government, I think, as maybe a sustainability coordinator. I have my internship this summer with the sustainability coordinator in Key West, so that's probably.
Hello everyone, my name is Shang Zhang. I come from Thailand.
I would like to marshal the traditional industry in Taiwan into more sustainable path.
Hi everyone, my name is Hui Zhang and I came from China too. I'm now studying sustainable energy and I'm taking the food planning class this semester too. My undergrad is chemistry. The reason why I chose to learn the sustainable because it's the energy part has some more connection with the chemistry, and I don't want to be the one who pollute the earth. So that's it.
Okay, my name is Julio Torres, and my undergrad is in microbiology. My master's is in environmental sciences. Currently, I work as an environmental consultant for a number of years in projects all over the United States and some international projects. After that, I went into education. I actually worked at Hillsborough Community College. I'm a supervisor of automation and records at the University campus, and I've been an adjunct professor of biological sciences and part of the Sustainability Council.
I'm Chris Cosman. I'd stand up, but this is not really my forte right now. Kind of like you, I started at USF back in 2000 as an engineering student. I got through all the boring, hard physics and got to the classes that I've been looking forward to. By the time I got to them, I no longer look forward to them. I worked with an engineering firm at the time as an environmental tester. I ended up switching, and I have a dual degree in history and political science or international relations from USF. After that, did a little bit of everything, was a restaurant manager, joined the Army, airborne infantry, and my parachute didn't like me at the time, so on my fourth surgery, they retired me about a year ago. I'm in sustainable tourism right now, and hope to work with, I'm local, going to work with the local tourism companies and big theme parks and get them on the right track to, with how many people go there every year, it's a great chance to, affect change in a lot of people's lives. So.
So we're missing a few people, and I just want to read names and make sure we didn't skip. Chelsea is not here, right? And Amy, two Amy's. Oh, I wonder if they planned that. All right. Bad day for Amy's. Okay, so thank you everybody for your introductions.
Yes. Since we don't have a projector.
Yeah, we do not currently.
Online.
So yeah, the projector is being wonky. We were going to pull up the syllabus to walk you through and give you a sense of what's going on. If you have a computer or laptop, you might want to pull it up for yourself, since it looks like we're not going to be able to project it. Or at least not yet. We have a fearless tech warrior helping us out. So if you go to the Canvas page, and there's a sort of brief description of the course, and then there's a link to the syllabus, so you can open that up. If you don't have a laptop with you, don't worry about it. We'll talk through stuff generally, and then you can read the specific policies and whatnot after the fact. No dice?
I was going to set one of our laptops.
Well, we just connect this one to the computer.
Oh, that would be awesome. You try the laptop? Yeah. So Carl's going to kick us off and give you kind of the big picture spiel of what this class is about, what our learning outcomes are, what we're hoping that you get out of this. I'm going to talk in a little more detail about the assignments and
the schedule and grades.
Yes, and then Carl's going to cover schedule and grades, and then at the end, if we can get the projector up and running, I'll pull up our Canvas page and just kind of show you how I've organized it, because I know every instructor organizes Canvas differently, and so every semester you have to learn like 14 new ways to find a file. So I'm going to show you how I did it, so you can check that out. And yeah, all right, kick us off, sir.
If you've got the syllabus up from the Canvas site on your computer, you can see it and follow along. You've got our names and office numbers and emails and office hours. There's a third person involved in teaching the class. She can't be here tonight, Stephanie Phillips. She's another one of our doctoral students, and she'll be working with us, not teaching, but kind of support service, you might call it.
So you might get emails from her or see her commenting on some of your work online.
Yeah, and I think it was in the first week's memo, but no, that's the online class.
Yeah.
When you send us an email, if you send me an email, make sure you copy both Cagle and Stephanie. We do tag team. I don't want to pretend I'm totally incompetent, but sometimes I get really busy and I don't look at my email for a day or two. And if you need an answer quick, you know, if you write to both of us, one of us will answer you quickly. We kind of tag team. So, you know, if you write to just me, you might have to wait for a response similarly, but if you write to both Cagle and I, probably just do it. Stephanie can't make policy decisions.
Yeah. It's playing the odds.
But write to both of us. We kind of do the Carl and Cagle tag team teaching thing, and we're good at this, working together, but write to both of us. Always. And we will make sure we copy the other one in our responses so we're on the same page. Okay, course description. This is a course that draws from our discipline in rhetoric, from the discipline of environmental communication, and from political science and policy studies. We're hoping to give you three things: an understanding of the challenges and the opportunities for communicating about sustainability, a theoretical framework to think about analyzing communication situations, what in our business we'd call a rhetorical situation, and some practice at applying practical production skills. So the course is, hey, nice to see you again. The course is kind of balanced between concepts, theory from our disciplines, and putting those to work, practical applied strategies, including some software for designing visuals and
Very
things
simple.
like that.
Don't
Very
worry.
simple.
Don't forget.
First stuff.
Very simple.
So when we were designing the course, we built it around three kind of ideas, purposes that match onto the three projects that Cagle will tell you about in a couple of minutes. The first one is just understanding sustainability. We're not going to teach you about sustainability, but we want to teach you how to write about, and when I say write, I mean using words, using visuals, using digital media. So communicate important ideas, concepts, and values about sustainability to outside stakeholders, to policymakers, to the general public. That's one of our purposes. We want to teach you to make what I call making the invisible visible. Sustainability is usually an invisible thing. And how do you make not just sustainability, but its consequences, its values, visible and compelling to people? That's another one of our tasks. Our third goal is to talk about theories and strategies for motivation and change. How do you communicate with people in ways that doesn't just inform them, but motivates them, compels them, moves them to change what they do, to adopt new policies, to change their thinking and their behavior. And this is the lecture for next class, giving somebody a bunch of information and facts is a great thing to do. Good. Most of the time that doesn't change their mind, and it certainly doesn't change what they're going to do, how they change their behaviors. And that move from knowing something to acting differently is kind of the holy grail of sustainability or environmental communication. That's our third kind of goal. In the past, well, Cagle and I are in the process of rewriting all of our rewriting all of our lectures so that this course, this class, unlike the past 2 or 3 years, we're going to front load it and build it around a couple of conceptual issues. So your next class, there is a long lecture. I think we emailed you and said you might want to start the reading. It's probably the biggest reading load for any single class is for next week. Yeah. It's a lecture that I'll give you on what I call the rationalist paradox. The biggest problem in communicating about sustainability or the environment is precisely, you can give somebody all the facts in the world and a lot of time they just nod their head and say, sure. And they go on doing all those terrible things and it doesn't change how they behave. And that, if you're in my business, that's a problem people have been grappling with for centuries. And we're going to talk about that as a kind of core challenge to the course that runs through everything we do. The second kind of opening conceptual issue that we think runs through everything we do, and we pick it because it also runs through almost all work in environmental sustainability change, is the issue that we call the structure versus the individual. In And again, there'll be a set of readings for the third class. Lecture is on that. But how many of you have read Naomi Klein's recent book, This Changes Everything, Capitalism versus the Climate? Okay.
It's quite a tome. It's quite a tome, but it's worth the read. Yeah,
I got you'll get a little snippet of it. You'll get about a 10-page section of it for the third class. I'm going to miss class somewhere the 19th of February because I've been invited to go out to Reno, Nevada for a conference where Naomi Klein, who's written this book and they've now turned it into a movie, a documentary, is presenting her book, and I'm one of the respondents criticizing her book in public. So it'll be kind of interesting. But Klein is somebody who says the only way to solve our climate change problems is to completely revolutionize all of global capitalism. Everything we do is wrong. We've got to change everything. That is large structural change, and because incremental or individual change is pointless. It doesn't work. There is, you'll get a lecture, but there's a debate in social theory and in motivational theory between what's the best thing to do. Try to get structural change because individual action is pointless, or try to change individual hearts and minds and get bottom-up grassroots change that you need to support structural change. That's a tension that runs through almost all work in this discipline. So the next two classes will be about those large conceptual things that will then play out all semester. And there are fairly substantial reading assignments attached to that, and fairly, we agreed to give them the lectures, didn't we? Unlike past years, we are going to give you the written out lectures for our classes. So for next class, my lecture on the rationalist paradox runs 12, 13, 14 single-spaced pages.
Yeah, I think it ended up a little smaller with the column layout.
Yeah, but it's a big piece of writing. It's 10 or 12 single-spaced pages. But what it will do, I'll give you in writing what I will then deliver orally with, if the slide projector is working, PowerPoint slides. We haven't done that in the past. I'm worried that, well, you'll read the lecture and then you're going to think, okay, would you tell me something I don't already know? But students in the past have said, yeah, the lecture was kind of interesting, but I didn't get all of it. Could I have it in writing? So we're not going to test you. We will give you the readings and the lectures that go with them. If you want to read the lectures ahead of time, they're there for you. If you don't, you can read them later. You can also sit. Yeah, you can come to class and listen to us babble.
Class anyway, even if you read the lectures. But.
Right. The students in the online section, those lectures are what they get, although we videotape the class lectures and post them for the online students, so they get both.
And if the word lecture sounds a little scary and maybe boring, we'll get to that in the participation part of the syllabus. So.
Yes.
Yes.
It's really weird being over here. In an English department, you never lecture. You sit down, you're in a small class, you're sitting in a circle, and you talk back and forth, and it's a conversation for 3 hours. Nobody stands up and does PowerPoint and wears a tie. This is not something we do in my home discipline.
Yeah.
So, learning outcomes. When you leave this class, we hope you've learned 4 things. You learned how to explain science, economics, ethics, the social dimensions of sustainability in ways that are accessible to a very large range of audiences. That you can learn and then apply basic concepts in communication to different situations. That you can construct an argument. I mean, rhetoric is the study of arguments, basically. For the last 2,500 years, you'd think we'd figured it out by now. But that you can understand what an argument is, what the pieces of an argument are, know how to put them together, know how to take them apart, and write really good arguments for different purposes and audiences. And finally, that you can use a range of technologies, her expertise, to produce the kinds of things, texts, documents, visuals, websites that are useful for you. Readings. There are all the course readings. We will get to the day-by-day schedule. All your readings are listed in the schedule in the back of the syllabus. Those readings are all on file on the Canvas website. They're under the Modules tab. These are things that Cagle and I have culled from books, journals, magazines over the years. There is no textbook for a course like this. We make it up as we go along, but there is a substantial list of readings, but you don't have to pay for anything. They're all listed there on Canvas. I hope I saw a couple smiles for that. You don't have to buy, another $150 textbook. Until we publish this one as a textbook.
Yeah, I don't think our class costs any money.
No, other tuition.
Well, okay. Yes, all of you probably thought, wow, she's terrible when I just
You're
said that. Yes, your tuition. So I'm going to talk about assignments now briefly. We have 3 major projects in the class, and then each project has a couple different deliverables, assignments associated with it. So the first big project we're going to do is the accommodation project. This is the part that Carl was saying is kind of more his wheelhouse, a lot of his expertise. And you'll see for each of these projects, they tie into those learning outcomes and kind of the big picture challenges that we're grappling with throughout the course, the rationalist paradox, the structural individual change debate. Each project addresses pretty much everything that is running through the course as a theme, but will highlight some more than others. And then the third project in particular is going to give you a chance to really bring everything together. The first project is the accommodation project. So accommodation is a technical term from rhetoric that means to make information accessible to a variety of audiences. So you accommodate, as a verb, it's accommodate. You would accommodate a scientific text for an audience reading National Geographic, or you would accommodate a scientific text for your boss who needs a 10-minute primer on best sustainability practices at theme parks, right, for example.
And the benefit of accommodate as a new metaphor is it doesn't mean dumb down or
Exactly.
simplify. That's not what you do.
Exactly. So accommodate is a really broad concept. We'll spend an entire class period, pretty much week 4, talking about accommodation and what it is and how to do it. It's a broad concept that means a lot more than just make the words smaller, dummy, and has to do with how do you actually appeal to people who have different values, right? How do you reach out to audiences that care about different things, or audiences who are coming from different places, whether that's a different place in terms of their education, a different place in terms of their religious values, a different place in terms of their purpose. A business person making a decision for their business is operating from a very different set of motivations than a private homeowner trying to decide whether to put solar panels on their house. 2 different things, right? So the accommodation project, you're going to produce 2 deliverables for that. We're giving you 3 scientific articles to choose from. 2 are from previous classes. Which 2 other core classes? Water and systems. Water and systems. Have you all taken both of those? Some people have, right? Or one or both. There's 1 article from the water class, 1 article from the systems class, and then 1 article that we chose on sustainable manufacturing. And you get to pick one of those articles, and then you are going to cull the technical information and concepts out of the article, and then accommodate it for 2 new audiences. The first audience is a public audience, so we'll give you some examples of what that might look like. So you might, for example, turn that technical information into an engaging story that would be published in Wired magazine, for example, right? Or you might turn it into an engaging story that might get published on a parenting blog. And you'll decide where your sort of publication, imaginary publication is, and you'll let us know who you're writing for. Because writing doesn't happen in a vacuum, right? Writing happens for audiences. It is literally possible to write a document that is going to get the same response from the same response from everybody, right? You have to target your writing to specific audiences. The second deliverable for that project is an accommodation of the same technical information.
I'm sorry, do we want to talk about the case study we're going to walk through in class?
Yeah, give me a second.
Okay.
Let me do the
Sorry.
deliberative first.
My bad.
No. I would have forgotten to do that. So the second deliverable you're going to produce is you're going to take the same exact technical information, the same article you already chose, and then you're going to accommodate it for a set of policy papers, right? So you're going to turn it into a white paper or a policy recommendation paper, where again, you boil all that technical and scientific information down and put it into the context of arguments and appeals that work for the particular policymakers or decision makers that you are targeting. Now, we'll look at some examples of that as well. So we have a somewhat lengthy and diffuse, but it gives you an idea of what it means to target an audience. A white paper that Goodwill wrote about e-waste, right? So Goodwill Industries, of course, accepts donations from the public. People often drop off outdated electronics, and then Goodwill is, you know, left trying to deal legally and morally with this e-waste, and it costs them a lot of money. And so they've written this policy paper about how to grapple with this. So you would also pick an organization, a policy group, an NGO, something, and then write to them about the topic of your choice. So what Carl just reminded me to talk about is, I just said e-waste and Goodwill. We're going to talk throughout the accommodation project about e-waste. That's sort of a case that we're using to illustrate these different types of writing. So we'll read a technical article about e-waste, and then we'll read a National Geographic piece that's like a long, interesting story with characters and a narrative and lots of descriptive language, right? So that's an epideictic, that's that sort of public audience accommodation. And then we'll look at some policy pieces also on e-waste. So that way you can kind of see how those concepts move between different types of writing. And you can model your own work after that. So that's project one. Did I get everything?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, please remind me. We're both terrible interrupters. P.S. Feel free to interrupt us back. Like, it's not, clearly we're not going to get offended. Project 2. Okay, so project 2, we're going to move into the realm of the visual, which is very exciting for me. You are going to be producing infographics. And do you all know what an infographic is? You even if you don't know the word, you've seen them like on Facebook or online somewhere. So when you see a picture, often it's like a tall, much taller than it is wide, and it'll have a lot of data and facts and like cool illustrations on it. That's called an infographic. It's sort of a really generic term for a particular type of visualization. In the past, we have constrained the topic for this project. We decided this semester to throw it wide open. So you are going to pick whatever topic most interests you, and you are going to generate an infographic that is intended to motivate sustainable behaviors at the individual level. So like Carl was talking about earlier, one of the big challenges that we're trying to grapple with throughout the semester is this idea that people in sustainability are constantly at odds over whether we should be going for structural change or going for individual change, right? And so this project is very much about the individual end of that spectrum. How do you motivate individuals to adopt small, sustainable behavioral changes in their everyday lives? So again, just like with accommodation, you have to be very specific about your audience. Who are you targeting, right? If you are trying to encourage people to shop sustainably, that's the topic we've used in the past, is sustainable shopping, you can't make everybody everywhere shop sustainably for every product with one argument. There are no silver bullets in rhetoric, right? At best, we have like brass buckshot. So what you do is you pick your audience. So let's say you want to sell the idea of using reusable cloth diapers to mothers in Colorado. That is a specific audience, right? You can think of arguments and appeals that are going to work for that specific audience. You can think of color schemes that are going to be appealing to that specific audience, right? If you are trying to sell goth kids on using sustainable laundry detergent, that infographic is going to look very different from your Colorado mom diaper infographic, right? You see where I'm going with this? So for that project, the infographic itself is the biggest deliverable. Before you create the infographic, you are going to turn in a very short proposal to us. Business memo, 1 to 2 pages, where you lay out your vision. It's just to help us make sure that you're on the right track before you put all that effort into creating a visual, right? And then when you turn in the infographic, you'll also turn in another short memo, 1 to 2 pages, where you explain to us why you made the choices you did, right? So partly we do that just because it helps us make sure that we're not misreading the work you're doing in the infographic, right? Maybe you know things about your audience that we don't know. And so we need you to explain to us, like, oh, I chose this color scheme because it has particular meaning in this culture that I'm writing to. Yeah?
Does the infographic itself have any text whatsoever?
Yeah, mostly infographics do. So infographics are incredibly multimodal. They usually have a combination of linguistic text, figures, so there'll be like data in the form of tables or pie charts, that sort of thing, and then illustrations also. And we'll look at a ton of examples in class. For that project, so for the first project, we're going to talk mostly about e-waste to kind of keep all our examples on the same topic. For the infographics, we're going to look at a lot of climate change visuals and talk about the power of visualization. Because the visualization project of the infographic also helps us think about addressing the rationalist paradox, right? This idea that you can't just give people facts. And one of the ways that it helps us address that paradox is there's a ton of research out there showing that people have emotional responses to pictures in a way that they don't to text. Even the most descriptive text will often not elicit the same kind of emotional response and connection that a picture does. I mean, think about the iconic pictures of environmentalism, right? Think about the polar bear image. There was one just last year that was really widespread. Do you know the one I'm talking about? The starving polar bear from last year. Also, pictures of icebergs are pretty standard fare in the climate change visual literature. Moving outside of environmentalism, the picture of the very young Syrian refugee who drowned last year and washed up on a Turkish beach, that literally changed the conversation. That one photograph changed the conversation. So that's what we're going to be talking about in terms of the theory, and then you'll put it into practice in an infographic. Yes, sir?
Question for that, just to kind of plan ahead.
Yeah.
With it being basically graphical, is there any specific program we should get?
Great question. Everyone's like on top of that question. Every semester we teach this. We are going to cover some very, very easy to use online programs in class. So I have, since the last time we taught this, a new program has come online that is way better and way more useful and way more. So in the past we used PictoChart when you were in the class, right, Beth? There's a new one. So PictoChart is nice, but it's an online program. It's free, but it's like fairly limited. They only have a certain number of templates, and it's got a very particular aesthetic to it. Like, it's very comic-y looking, kind of. There are 2 new programs that I have since taught and worked with that are super easy to use, right? They're very user-friendly. You can pick up on them really quickly, and they're free to use online. And they're already set up to where you can just sort of drag and drop elements in. It's not like Photoshop where you're starting from scratch, right? It gives you the support you need to build an infographic. And so that brings us actually to reason number 2. We ask you to write a little memo about why you made the choices you made. So again, it might be because you know stuff we don't know about what you're trying to do. But also, we're not asking you to become graphic designers, right? Like, you didn't take this class to become a graphic designer. And so your vision might not match the reality of what you end up being able to produce in the time and with the technology that you're using. So we want you to have the opportunity in writing to tell us what you were going for so that we can grade you on that. Because I'm not grading you, I'll grade most of those, and I'm not going to be grading you on like the quality of the perfect infographic design, whatever. That's not what we're here for. In the future, if you in fact become a sustainability professional who's working with the production of graphics, probably, unless you already have that experience and know those technologies, you'll be working with somebody who will execute your vision for you, right? But you need to have this sort of theoretical background that we're hoping to work through in class in order to create that vision in the first place in a way that's productive. Yes, sir?
So if we have like our own program,
anyone, you can use.
I used to do that a long time ago, and I have a couple.
Yeah. So we'll spend a whole class day working with technologies to get you set up and ready to go for making the infographic on your own. But if you have your own programs that you use, anyone a Photoshop user? Yeah. So we've got a little bit of Photoshop. You can use anything else that you want, but we'll cover those 2 programs in class, so you'll have those options. Other questions on that project? Okay, now we get to project 3, which is the super exciting one. Oh, we're so excited about project 3.
And a little bit anxious.
And a little bit anxious. There's a lot of ambiguity currently in this project because it is what we call a service learning project. A service learning project is when a class partners with a community organization in order to do work with them and produce work for them that actually matters out in the real world. But what that means is that we can't sort of plan and control every little piece of it in advance because we're kind of developing it in conjunction with our community partner. But that also means it's really exciting because for the 3rd project, you're going to be producing work that may very well actually help shape this project moving forward. So we're going to work with the Florida Microplastics Awareness Project. It's a big grant. They're associated with the Agricultural Extension Office and working on a big grant from NOAA. They're doing a couple of things. So they're trying to just simply raise awareness around the issue of microplastics. So microplastics, in case you're not aware, right, are exactly what they sound like, little itty-bitty pieces of plastic that are increasingly on a lot of sustainability folks' radar, right? There's more and more evidence that the microplastics, so not just, we all know about the trash island in the Pacific, But not just the large pieces of trash and plastic debris floating in the ocean, but these little itty bitty microscopic pieces of plastic cause all kinds of problems. So, including but not limited to coral endangerment. What else? I mean, they get into the life cycle, of course, of sea life, and that's a real problem. And then they get into our life cycles, and then of course plastics that have been treated with anything are now floating around in our water systems and in our bodies, and so that's kind of that's a technical term, by the way.
You can say ish.
Ish, yes. So they're just trying to raise awareness because a lot of people don't, microplastics is not on the general public's radar in the way that, for example, renewable energy is. It's not something that people even know to be worried about. The other thing that they're
And it's literally invisible.
It is literally invisible, absolutely. It's literally invisible. So it's a perfect case to be thinking about, okay, how do you take something that, I think it could be easy if you're not familiar with things like life cycle chains, or if you're not familiar with how delicate ecosystems are, for somebody to look at that, like look at a sample of water with microplastics in it and say, well, I don't see anything wrong. Can it really hurt that much? There's so little, though. So it's a real challenge to make these little invisible pieces of plastic matter to people. The other part of that grant with NOAA is citizen science. So citizen science is a movement, I guess. I don't know, movement? Citizen science is an effort at getting citizens involved in doing science, often through data collection. Right, so it would take one botanist a really long time to go out and catalog every species in a hectare in, Idaho. But if they can corral a bunch of citizens into going out and cataloging species and doing their data collection, then suddenly you are working with much more robust data sets.
My favorite piece of citizen science, I told you in Iowa, they zeroed out the budget for testing. My university, bless their heart, the Center for Sustainability, provided training and trained about 4,000 citizens to do water quality sample gathering. And the university got a grant to test them. So the state refused to do it. So my university said, fine, we'll train an army of citizens to go out and collect proper samples that are protected data and university samples. So my university provided all the data for water quality surveillance in Iowa that the state legislature didn't want, so they zeroed out the budget. And so our group had this big citizen science project, which was really cool.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
A lot of the national wildlife refuges, which, those are in the news right now, the national wildlife refuges, a lot of them use citizen science to track butterfly migration and stuff. So that is what this project is doing through NOAA. They have currently a 2-year grant, and it's just getting off the ground. Literally just getting started. So we're getting in on the ground floor. Dr. Maya McGuire, who is running this grant, is very new to the science communication and citizen engagement. She'll be the first to tell you that. She's new to that game. She's a PhD in biological sciences, marine sciences, biological and marine sciences. She will in fact come to our class and visit us on February 18th, and we're going to spend the class talking with her about her project, talking with her about what she needs, talking with her about the kinds of outreach and engagement she wants to do. So for that project, we have thought generally about what deliverables you're going to give us. So we've managed to come up with what we think are broad enough categories of deliverables that we can go ahead and give you a sense of what work you'll be doing for the project, but leave it pretty open so that you can really take a creative approach to solving the problems that Maya presents us with. The first thing that you're going to give us 3 things. The first thing you're going to give us is a proposal. You're going to be doing these projects in teams. Depending on how our meeting with Maya shakes out and what people are interested in doing, we're envisioning those teams being anywhere from 3 to 5 people. And in those teams, you're going to write a proposal. And you're going to tell us what your team is going to do. Now this project, so February 18th is week 6 of the semester. It's very early. Is that right, week 6? Something like that, I don't know. Week 5 or week 6 that we're getting started, and we're gonna run with this project all the way through the end of the semester. You're gonna be working on this project for a full 2/3 of the semester. And so that'll give you the opportunity in your proposal to think big. right? What can you really do as a team? Think about your time, think about what skills you have available in the team. And we are envisioning that the things you might do for this project can be probably lumped into one of 3 categories. So, the first thing that you might do for this, and this is all in the syllabus and this is all on the assignment sheet, so don't forget. It's lots of details. The first thing you might do is just give Maya and her team feedback on their current practices. So they have a website, right? They have a Facebook page and they have a Facebook group. So maybe your team just does a really deep analysis of the website and goes in and gives a bunch of recommendations for how to make the website better, right? Like, we're not asking you to actually make a website, you can just give recommendations. Yes, sir?
Now, this is the project that are pretty much providing the framework of grading for the course, right?
Of what for the course?
The framework of grading for the course. This is primarily the 3rd project that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. This is 40% of your grade is this project. Yeah. So, I mean, it covers most of the timeline of the course. Like I mentioned, we'll be working on this for fully 2/3. It is 40% of your grade, so it is a big chunk. But the other projects in your participation matter fairly too. And Carl's going to talk about grading here in just a second, so if that doesn't clear it up, let us know. So you might produce recommendations. That might be what your group does. The second thing we thought you might do is actually make a thing, right? So let's say in Project 2, you got really into this infographics thing. And so as a team, you decide to make a set of 5 infographics for them to use and distribute on their Facebook page and like try and pick up some traction. So you might actually like make a thing that they can use in their web presence somehow. And then the last is, so this citizen engagement, what they're doing is they have a Google map, right? And they're trying to get citizens all around Florida to go out and pull samples off the coastline so they can actually track the data for the Florida coastline. There is no data, there's not a single data sample from, I don't know, a couple hours north of us to a couple hours south. Like the whole west coast of Florida is just barren of data. And so maybe as a team, you want to develop some strategies for going out and getting citizens to sign up for the training, so they do a training. And then that would be sort of an action approach. So we're imagining you can either analyze and recommend, you can make a thing, or you can go out in the world and act on the citizen science.
There is a local member of this project team. Dr. McGuire is from Tallahassee. She's at UF.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of the
Laura, I think?
Yeah. Laura is a Park Service employee at one of the local wildlife refuges, and she's the local representative. And we'll be working, I think, more closely with her.
Probably.
For us, this is kind of teaching as improv, and it makes me very nervous.
But it's so exciting.
But in the past, I mean, this is a really important thing if you're communicating about sustainability. My graduate students have in the past called me a damn print bigot because I'm almost 60 years old and I'm really good with words and I write a lot, but I like words and print. But I'm smart enough to know that the affordances of online and digital and visual representation are absolutely crucial to what people in sustainability or the environment need to do. So for us, in the past, we've said, okay, we don't have time to build a citizen outreach and build a website and build an outreach campaign. So we've had people analyze existing ones. Useful, but sort of unsatisfying.
Yeah.
This one allows us to do the teaching and the analytic work, but allows you to actually put it into practice, work with something that's being built, where your work, with luck, will show up as part of their website, as part of their campaign. We have also invited, and it's a question of scheduling, the communication director from the Tampa Bay Estuary Foundation.
No, program
Foundation group to come to class and talk about best practices, what she does and how she does this as part of this project. So for us, and I'm guessing from your question, it's a little anxiety producing, as they say. Well, I'm not sure what the goal is. It's not. The first two are really cleanly defined. We've done this before. We got all the dots dotted.
Yeah.
This one, we're playing it as it lays, and it's going to be kind of collaborative and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
The benefit is, instead of just talking about what other people do, you'll be doing that, but you'll also be doing it, and doing it on what we think is probably a very good project itself.
Yeah.
You know, microplastics awareness, putting together data sets, getting citizens interested, informed, gathering stuff. So it's a chance to do, you know, put our money where our mouth is, ideas, but also doing. So if any of you are anxious about it and don't have the whatever that the gentleman in the back laudably does to say, hey, wait a minute, this makes me a little nervous here, dude.
Yeah.
Talk to us. We're going to work this out as we go. We're not going to not give you advice and say, oh, but that wasn't exactly what we were looking for. Honest, we don't know exactly what we're looking for. We're working this out with Maya, and partly it'll be worked out with her and us and you in the room.
Yeah.
Okay? So you got to kind of go with us on this one.
Yeah. And so you'll give us a proposal, and much like with the infographic proposal, but as a team. And that's the space where we can say, this seems great, like, or I feel like maybe this is getting off track from what we had talked about with Maya or whatever, right? Give you the feedback, help you move that project forward. And then as a team, you'll actually do whatever work it is that you propose to do, right? Whether it's the analysis and recommendations, making a thing, going out and doing a thing, and then you'll write a report about it. And that report is going to be a substantial part of that grade, and it's just you reporting back to us, but it's also a document that we can then hand over to Maya that documents the work that you did. So let's say you made a thing, so you would include the thing that you made in this final report, and then maybe a couple of paragraphs explaining why you made those choices. Well, we went out and we interviewed 12 local citizens, and they said that microplastics wasn't a word that they could connect to, but bits of plastic was a phrase that they could connect to, right? Like whatever it is that you did, whatever decisions you made, you can explain all of that in the final report so that there's more than just the product to be of use to Maya moving forward in that project moving forward. And then the last thing you do, and this is where the very small part of that grade, is during our final exam period, we don't do exams or tests or quizzes or anything, but we will meet during the final exam period and your team will give a brief presentation on the work you did. And we're hoping, we don't have it confirmed yet, but we're hoping that the folks from the Microplastics Awareness Project will be able to attend, and that way we won't just be handing them a stack of reports that you've produced, they'll also have like a little introduction from you that's a little more personal and accessible. And the other thing too in terms of grading, I mean, I think I can speak for both of us.
Sure.
When I run new projects, I am always erring on the side of generosity to students, right? Like this is a weird project, and I get that. And if it seems a little too loosey-goosey, like I get that. And we are not in the business of penalizing people for being creative, and we're not in the business of penalizing people for not producing that thing that we secretly hoped you would make but didn't want to tell you about because we have to maintain our ivory tower mystique or whatever. That's not how we really operate. So really we're just hoping that you all have the chance to actually work with, you know, working professionals doing this communication work, and also to do work that you can feel like has actual value in the world, right, that goes beyond the walls of this classroom. And that's why we really want to do this project. But again, as Carl said, just to reiterate, if throughout the project you are feeling weird about it or it's feeling a little too ambiguous, absolutely come talk to us. We have office hours, we're on email all the time, yeah. Questions about that project? I'm sure you have like a million questions, but we'll solve those.
Most of their answers are going to be, I don't know yet.
We'll solve those down the road. Yeah. Okay, so we have a quick rundown of policy from you, and then we are...
And in the meantime, you are going to go with him.
Okay.
There's a classroom behind us where there's a computer that works.
Oh, good.
And
okay.
you two are going to go make sure we can get the Google Docs slide for the second half set up.
Sounds good, sounds good. So, policy.
Yes. Syllabus also has a set of policies here. Participation. It's all written down. In my business, we like to talk to people. I can't know what you understand or what your questions are unless you talk in class. As I say to my English graduate students, you know, I can lecture all day, and you know, I'm brilliant, but you might find it boring, and I don't know what to talk about that you would find interesting and useful and compelling unless you talk to me. In my graduate seminars in English, every class starts the same way. I ask them, say, okay, I had you read something. What do you want to talk about today? I have a whole lecture written out, but you know, what do you want to talk about today? And I write it all on the board. And in the 3 hours we have, we all get to talk about what we want to. Which is to say, 10% of your final grade in this class is coming into class, having read the materials. We don't give tests, so you're not going to get reading quizzes or exams to see that you did the reading. Your graduate students, I assume you wouldn't be spending good money to do the reading. So we assume you've done the reading, you've come to class, you might even read the lectures. Cagle and I like to be interrupted. Either, you know, there's something else you want to talk about that's associated with it, or there's something you don't understand, or you have an experience that fits into this. I hope not. I do end up lecturing, but I hope not to be the only person in the room talking. Some years ago, there was an absolutely wonderful book called Lives on the Boundary, written by a director of the writing program at UCLA, a guy named Mike Rose. And in there, he defines education as using new words and concepts in the company of others. A very humanities form definition of education. But I think of education as not, you know, learning how to press keys on a keyboard, but learning how to talk about, play with, use new ideas, new words, new concepts together, publicly, in the company of others. So we're putting our money where our mouth is. 10% of your final grade in the class is coming to class and talking. My way of thinking about that is if you're here every day and your mouth is shut, that's a C. That's like, okay, you're here. Now, you may be stoned, you may be hungover, you may not have done the reading, you may just be a body sitting in the back of the room. But if you're not engaging and opening your mouth and talking to me and laughing at me, if you don't laugh at me 3 or 4 times a day, we're all in trouble.
I'm allowed to be medicated though.
Huh?
I'm allowed to be medicated.
Okay, turn around is fair play, dude. I'm allowed to be medicated too. I'm going to get medicated. It's not being taped. So we want you to talk about these ideas in the reading. Some of the things you're going to read are going to be pretty strange to you. I'm hoping you'll come in and say, look, I don't have a clue what this guy's talking about. What does he mean by I think? So talk to us in class. And I will promise you, neither Cagle and I will look at you and say, that was really dumb, or make you feel stupid, or make you feel bad. I had a professor in graduate school, Ted Wright, oh Lord, that was from 1981 or 2, and he was the best I'd ever seen anybody since, before or since. Somebody in the class, we had a couple of oddballs in graduate school, ha-ha, and they'd ask these bizarre questions that, you know, what the heck that? And Ted would, oh, so you're asking, that's a very interesting question. And Ted would turn it into a really interesting question. And I thought, that's why nobody's afraid to talk in Ted's class. He's a great teacher. So, you know, especially if you're a non-native speaker, please don't be anxious. Nobody's going to laugh at you. Nobody's going to belittle you, make you feel small. Even if I think it's a dumb question, I will not say that. And I almost never hear. Besides, if you ask me a dumb question that tells me, oh, okay, I got to back up. I got to get in his universe, his head, not in my own. So talk in class. Please don't feel bad. I will make a fool of myself in class because I can afford to. I'm a full professor. I'm almost 60. I'm gray-haired, and I'm an ex-dean. And if I'm going to make a fool of myself in class, it sets a tone where maybe you're a little more relaxed to ask that question where you're not sure you know the answer. So talk in class. Email policy. Write to both Cagle and I, as you are probably figuring out, we work together. So write to both of us whenever you write to us. We good?
Mm-hmm. Yep,
great.
we're all set.
Technology policy. Bring your computers to class, but I don't know how to say this. Please be professional and polite. Last year I went postal in class because I was sitting here teaching and 2 people in the back of the room had a movie playing on their iPad. They had sharing earbuds and they were talking and laughing and watching a movie in the middle of my class.
Yeah.
It just, it disturbs everybody around you. So bring your technology to class, but be polite, be professional, don't be distracting people. Grades, okay, your syllabus says grades. I guess we might as well finish this as opposed to showing you. Participation is 10% of your grade. The accommodation project has two pieces, the popular, the policy. 15% each, 30% of your grade. The infographic is 20% of your grade, 5% for the proposal, 15% for the infographic you build and your analysis of it. One of my friends in graduate school was an architect. Every time they built something, they had to go do jury, which is they had to show it to people and defend it, explain it. This is why I designed this building this way. Here are the building principles. Here are the design principles. That's sort of what your memo is. 20% of your grade. The last one is the 40%. This might morph a little what the pieces are as we go. We're kind of playing this golf metaphor. We're playing this as it lays. We're going to play this as improv. Yeah. There's an accessibility statement here. If you have any kinds of disability or problems with accessing information, please let us know. We will work with you. Similarly, if emergency policy, if there's an emergency and you have trouble getting out of the building, you need to let us know so we can make sure we can all get out safely, although there is an exit door right there. If there's a hurricane or whatnot, a terrorist event, about which more in a second, everything is on Canvas. You can email us, you can Skype us, you can contact us, ma'am.
In terms of like your teaching styles, are you guys going to be both present in the classroom, or is it just going to be one?
With the exception of the day that I'm in Reno.
Although I thought your flight wasn't until the 19th. Is it on the 18th?
I'll have to look, I think.
There might be one day with.
There might be one day that I'm on. Otherwise, we will both be here all the time. Even when I'm lecturing, Cagle will be here to say, "Hey, Carl," and vice versa. We don't split it up half and half. We're here all the time, both.
Yeah, frankly, I got nothing better to do on a Thursday night, so. Oh, I meant that as a compliment. So, yeah.
Are the readings like complementary or supplemental to kind of like what are we going to be doing on the project? Meaning that it will give me kind of an idea how to engage those audiences, because like as an example, I work with developers, contractors, like all that stuff, and I work with students, so it's a total different thing. So there might be some things that I do not have that skill for engaging that audience in particular, or the terminology or the jargon or that stuff. Precisely. So.
Yeah, for the first project, we're going to look at very specific examples so that you can get a sense. But then part of why, for the first project, the technical information, we're constraining your choices, right? You have 3 technical articles to choose from. But then the specific audience you write to is up to you. So public audience, that's incredibly broad, right? Or policymaker even is incredibly broad. Perhaps slightly less so. And so that's part of why we wanted to give you the option to pick your own audiences for that, and then also for the infographic, both your topic and your audience are up to you, so that we give you opportunity to build on expertise that you already have, right? And everyone, one of the real pleasures of teaching this class, so this is the 3rd year in a row we've taught it, and one of the real pleasures of teaching this class and teaching in this major is that you all are some of the most driven people I've ever met, and motivated and focused. And even, even if you're still figuring out exactly what it is you want to do within sustainability, it's not like teaching, so I've taught in the past first-year composition, so it's like 18-year-olds who show up and are like, well, mom says I should be a nurse. Like, it's, you know what I mean? So you have expertise that we don't even know about. And so, by all means, please tap into that. The one place where that might not be true is for the 3rd project, right? But again, part of why we're trying to make the deliverables that we've thought of so far really broad and let teams really hone in and figure out what it is that they want to do or make is that you might have knowledge of audiences that you can tap into. The other thing where you might end up having to do a little bit of research when you're writing some of these documents. So again, like I used the example earlier with Project 3, and you're writing a report and you tell Maya and the NOAA grant folks, well, we decided to create this pamphlet for you to hand out, and we decided to use this language, but then we asked 20 of our friends to read it, and none of them understood it, so we rewrote it this way, and then we asked another, that's informal research, right? That's interviewing, participant interviewing. We absolutely encourage that kind of informal and formal if you need to go to the literature, research if there are issues. But yeah, hopefully you will be able to tailor your own work and the choices you make about the projects enough to where you're not having to do a lot of additional mental gymnastics around audience beyond the big concepts we're already asking you to grapple with.
And another way to get at, I think, part of what you were asking is, if you look at the readings, the second and third week, the first two big lectures, there's a pile of stuff, it's all theoretical, it's all conceptual, and it'll introduce you to a bunch of concepts, and my lectures say, here's the important pieces in here, here's what they mean, here's how to think about them. After that, so when we get to the accommodation, how do I take an article on systems analysis and make that comprehensible? We will give you some articles that say, here's some concepts. We will talk about specific strategies. We have the chart. We will, as part of our teaching, we will summarize it all and say, here's a chart, here are the 3 kinds of rhetoric, here are the kinds of arguments you make, the kinds of appeals you make, why and how. We're not going to assume you know that stuff. So we will, and you know, I love you already. And if you don't, he's talking to me, if you don't have what you need, you say that in class and we'll figure out what, because if you want it and don't understand it and need it, so does everybody else in the room. They're just not going to ask. So I think we will provide you the concepts, but then specifically connect those concepts and theories to here's how you put those to work. That's actually really hard to do. Okay, here are a bunch of concepts, bye. Or do this, but you don't know why. Connecting the two is kind of the holy grail where we're trying to hit. But if you don't see that connection, that's where you start waving your arms in the back of the room at us. Okay, we're almost, so you can look at the syllabus and see those are the readings you have to do for that day. When there is something due, as there is on the 18th, it'll be in that last column and it'll say due.
It's due by class time.
Yeah, due by class time. So that's the syllabus. We're gonna take a break. Well, after we answer whatever questions you have, we're gonna take a little break and we're gonna convene in the room back there because since we only meet once a week, I don't want to say, oh, okay, you know, head out early. You know, we have an hour and a half we didn't use.
No, we have a fun activity plan. Don't worry.
Yeah, and I'm going to be Mr. English teacher. Sir.
Is this like one book or one article, or is this like a bunch of articles?
The reading for next week?
All of them.
Oh, every bullet point is a different reading.
Oh.
Those are articles or book chapters.
And some of them that are selections from books that they don't have page numbers, they're usually pretty short. So
yeah, like the first one, the Shulevitz piece, is an article from the New Republic. What do I do on Saturday afternoons? I lie around and I read the New York Review of Books or the New Republic or the Atlantic, and I read this article. Oh, this is great! This is perfect for my class. Yeah. And it's written for
2.5 pages.
Yeah, it's 3.5 pages. It's written for a popular audience. The rest of this stuff is fairly substantial, and it's taken from books on climate change or the Yale Law and Policy Review. The annual review of sociology, which is why we emailed you a week ago and said, get a head start on this one. This is the heaviest reading load of the semester.
Yeah, we know it's terrible to look at.
We know it's a heavy reading.
But we really needed to front load so that we have room to actually do stuff, make stuff later in the semester.
Yeah.
Any other questions? You can keep coming back to the syllabus. This is not your only chance to ask questions.
Yeah.
So we should take a break then. Let's take 10 minutes.
Ma'am, would you read me yours? The top one, please.
We found that the government was withholding information about energy resources. We need that information to determine the future of climate change, something to do with weather.
Okay. Anybody else got one they want to read out loud? All right. Which half of the room, right half, well, my right, your left, which half of the room roughly had better summaries, could remember most of this passage? These guys. Okay, so, you know, we've got the Titanic here, and the brain cells are all over on this side. You guys are the lightweights, and you're kind of up here, and the heavyweights who could remember it are over here. Okay, so my point. Roughly, people on this half of the room wrote better summaries, could remember and write. Yours wasn't bad. You're almost a what do you call that in poker where you bring a ringer?
A ringer.
You're almost a ringer. You're an outlier. Yours wasn't bad. All right, let's try this again. Second passage. Let's start with this half of the room. Sir. Okay, I'm trying to remember. You're on this half of the room.
You guys both gave me one, so I went with, I was over here. My foot's over there, so I went with over here.
Okay, I need to actually see what's on your page. What your head read as opposed to your foot. Okay.
Figured 80% of me was over here, so I went with that one.
Okay.
All right, I have that range of motion in a detached retina is important to see the surgery is able to be done. They have two criteria that need to be met. Subretinal fluid depth is important. If there's not enough depth, the surgery is not possible.
All right.
My goodness.
You read a great one last time. Read me this one.
But mine was not for the second one, because there was, mine says this one was really short. Retina issues, 2 types of problems, and categories, and detachment. That one out.
Okay. Gentleman in front of you who had a good one last time.
The retina operation has 2 methods. Both have its distinction and have to be performed depending on the retinal stakeholder situation.
Ma'am, you read one the first time. Let me hear what you say this time.
The retina is detached. The retinal fluid is the first to be considered. The retina is shallow.
Okay. Let's hear yours.
A certain system measures the retina, but the mobile retina is difficult to measure because of its depth. Therefore, a certain task needs to occur so that this portion of the retina is measured.
Okay. Can I hear yours?
Me?
Yeah.
It must be determined how mobile the retina is before we do a procedure in which the retina is not drained.
Okay. Can I hear yours?
For this operation, which I think was Curtis Linkoff, we must determine the mobility of the retina. If it is detached, then fluid draining something. So
Okay, Josh, let's hear yours.
The detached retina has a little room to move.
Okay, let's hear yours.
Me?
Yeah, sorry.
The researchers wanted to do the procedure. There were 2 ways to do it: drainage and.
Okay. Anybody else on either side of the room want to read yours? Yes.
I got several researchers have found that the Custodes link-off operation has to do with draining fluid from the detached retina, also affecting fluid in the retina being too shallow will affect the mobility of the detached retina.
Very good. Okay, on average, which half of the room has a better summary?
Equal? That was a little mixed, wasn't it?
It was a little mixed.
Well, because Chris is used to operations.
Or, you know, you two could remember the name of the operation. I'm thinking about, let me put it this way. Compared to the first one, how was your second one? Over here.
Much better.
Compared to the first one, how was your second one? Over here.
Worse.
Worse. Okay, good.
This guy was bad on the first one, but.
Yeah.
That was my point. Is this going to work with the clicker?
Let me plug it
find
in.
out.
Let me plug it in.
All right, so that's my game.
Yeah. Don't forget my favorite joke about brains forming. Love that joke.
I don't remember that joke.
You always make a joke about like, so did you all just swap brains? Is that
Oh yeah, did you all just swap drains? My other favorite joke is, you guys had it great the first time. Did you all go out and get medicated between the first and second one? You know? Did you swap brains? You know, I was behind a car on the way to school today that had one of those nice little pink ribbons with a pink brain on top that said "Support the zombies." You know, did you just get zombified? So I want to talk about sentence style. This is my lecture called "Hacking Back the Conceptual Kudzu."
I think the batteries might be dead. It was
Your
on.
brain, it should be brain. Okay. In that case, will you?
Maybe. Yeah, I don't want to.
Okay. So, how many of you know what kudzu is? That's a picture of kudzu. Give me the next slide. If you our clicker's dying.
Oh, everything's not.
Oh, bloody. There you
There
go.
it goes, okay.
Kudzu.
Yay.
It's a fast-growing vine, like many invasives, brought in from China and Japan. Back up one
the
more.
clicker's working again. No, hang
Um,
on. Yes,
in the south where I
it's working, it just takes a second to respond.
Okay, in the south where I grew up, when they cut a new highway, they had those great big huge dirt faces and you get erosion. They plant kudzu on them. It grows 18 inches a day. It's a vine that grows 18 inches a day. So you plant it, it'd grow like heck, and you wouldn't get erosion. Unfortunately, it gets loose, and you can see this all over North Carolina at least. Those used to be trees. It will grow over everything in its path. Those used to be trees. They get covered with kudzu, they die, they rot, they fall down, and eventually you can turn a forest into that by letting the kudzu loose. And it's almost impossible to stop.
Yeah, it can grow a foot per day.
18 inches.
Oh.
For me, kudzu is a metaphor. This is what, from the Herndl dictionary, is called conceptual kudzu. When I think about, so kudzu grows 18 inches a day, kills everything. I like sentences. When you put sentences together wrong, they're like kudzu. They cover over all your ideas and everything you want to say, and it kills it. It sucks the life out of everything. Like kudzu, you have to hack back, prune your sentence style, prune your prose. That's my lecture. This is the metaphor here for me is conceptual kudzu. My last, well, okay.
What else is in the dictionary?
Huh?
What else is in the dictionary?
The Herndl dictionary?
The big
There's
summer.
all kinds of stuff in the Herndl dictionary. Most of it is not, unfortunately, acceptable for class discussion. So, what is clear style? What does it mean to write clearly? The answer here is, from an English professor, there isn't an answer for that. What counts as clear or good prose style is contextual. It depends on who you're writing for, what they know, what their experience is, what their expectations are. Again, audience, what do they know? The Herndl dictionary says, clear helps your readers understand and remember what they read, our game. If you can understand what I wrote, you can read it, you can understand it, and you can remember it. I'm going to say that's clear. Whatever it looks like, I'm going to define that as clear, which is the nature of my game here. So here, if you're learning to write, this is what my friend Rob and I call the theory of other minds. To be a good writer or communicator, you have to have a theory of other minds. That is, you have to think about how, not what you want to say and what you understand. I have a 12-year-old. She has no theory of other minds. She'll say, Dad, that something or another was, was interesting. Or Dad, I didn't like that. What does that mean? And I'll look at her and say, honey, I don't know what that is. What is that? If you've got kids, relative pronouns this, that, he, she, it, that refer to things, they use them all the time. They don't tell you what, I have no idea what she's talking about. But she doesn't have, she's 12. She doesn't have, she's a very smart child, but she doesn't have a theory of what, that Dad knows different things than I do. Dad doesn't know everything in my head, so I can't just talk to myself. Years ago, a couple of writing and cognitive specialists defined what later in here I'll call writer-based and reader-based prose. Writer-based, you're talking to yourself, you assume everybody knows what you know, you don't have to explain anything, including what you're talking about. That's not very clear to your readers. If you have a theory of other minds, you think not, what do I want to say, but how is the guy in the back going to understand this? How is he going to perceive, process, understand what I just said? I have a 12-year-old, everything's about parenting. A good parent, I read a couple of books on how to talk to teenagers so they will listen to you and understand. And I have to think about, how does Frances understand what I said? What will make sense to my daughter? Frances, not, what do I want her to think? And when I tell her what I want to say, doesn't work. When I think about, how does a 12-year-old process this information? What works for her? Then we make progress. So good writers have a theory of other minds. They have a theory of other minds on 3 levels. We're going to talk about this one today. We'll talk about all 3 of these in the semester today. Individual readers. how do individual readers process information? In psychology, it's called cognitive processing. That's what this lecture is about. So when you read a passage, when you read a sentence, what goes on in your head that if we know how the human brain processes language, then we can figure out how to put sentences together that take advantage of that processing style rather than fight against it. And I'm going to say a clear style is one that is designed to match how human beings process language when they think. The other theory of minds is audiences. So Cagle was talking about audiences earlier. You can have individual people, but you can also think about audiences, groups of people. So if I'm talking to a room full of scientists, okay, I understand scientists, roughly what they know, what their commitments are, what they're used to hearing, how they think, how they talk, what they value, and I can talk to a room of scientists fairly well. But if I'm talking to a room of English professors, I talk differently. Because those groups, communities of practice, discourse communities, language users who have a lot in common, develop ways of thinking and talking that are, if not unique, they're more characteristic of their group, right? A bunch of psychologists talk differently than a bunch of art professors. So you can have a theory of other minds individually or collectively. And the other theory of other minds that we will talk about later in the semester is genres. Does anybody know what a genre is? Fancy word? Take a stab at it. You're nodding.
Genre, like, I know what it means, but I can't explain it.
Category?
Yeah,
Category of?
Something.
Okay, so, horror movies is a genre. All horror movies have a set of things in common. What they do, how they work, how the scenes work, who goes to them. When you go to a horror movie, which I've never done, what you expect, or a mystery novel, a detective fiction. There's going to be, easier, a resume is a genre. You know what to look for, how to read it, you know what to expect, right? So a theory of other minds would be, if you're used to reading recommendation reports, then I can take advantage of that, but when I'm writing a recommendation report to you, I have to match your expectations, because you've read 100 of these, and if I write something totally different, it's going to be confusing, and you're going to have to, is this a recommendation report, or is this a diary entry? So there are at least 3 levels at which, to be a good writer, you need to think about what's going on in that other person, that group of persons' minds as they read this. That's what today's lecture is about. We're going to talk about the top part. Does this make sense? Good. Oh, there's a drag here. Okay, here's my game. The first passage we read, this half of the room read the top passage. This half of the room read the bottom passage. This half of the room that read this did a better job of writing me a summary, right? You could, on average, more or less, as a group, you could remember it and write it down. You could understand it, remember it, and write it down. I'm going to call that clear, or useful at least. You want people to understand what you write and remember it so they can act on it. Then how do you write that way? One of these didn't work. One of these did. And they say the same thing. Let's look at it. This half of the room. It was found that information concerning energy resources allocated to the states was not obtained. This action is needed so the determination of redirection is permitted on a timely basis when weather conditions change. A system must be established so that information on weather conditions and fuel consumption may be gathered on a regular basis. Sounds like something you'd read in a corporate report. Bottom half. We found that the Department of Energy did not obtain information about energy resources that federal officers were allocating to the states. The department needs this information so that it can determine how to redirect these resources when weather conditions change. The secretary of the department must establish a system so that his office can gather information on weather conditions and fuel consumption on a regular basis. There's actually more words in this passage than in this one. So you read more words, but you could understand it and remember it better. Why? What's the difference between these passages? More information? I don't know. Is there? Yes, there is. There are some specific things. There's more information. You mean in the bottom?
Yes.
There are some things in the bottom that aren't in the top. What are those?
We, the name of the department.
Okay, so the Department of Energy and the we. What else? Huh?
So that.
I'm sorry, still.
So that.
Ah, yes, the secretary and the states.
They lost, like lost.
I can't hear you. My bad ear. Can you? I'm sorry.
They say, I don't know much about it, but they use the we and must so that it kind of works.
Okay, so they use we here when it says it was found. Nobody was finding it, but somebody is doing it here. And so there's somebody doing it. There's somebody doing it here. There's the modal auxiliary must. Where is it? Must here, which is also up there. Okay. What other differences are there, ma'am?
Just looking at the first sentence of each one, they kind of the first one has a surprise ending. It's like here's all the stuff, but it wasn't obtained. And then the other one is like, okay, we did not obtain, and then they tell you what they didn't obtain. So the structure.
Okay, so in a sense, there's a surprise ending. The main verb is at the end of the sentence. You wait all the way through the sentence. Yeah, you go all the way through the sentence to find out what it's about, what's happening. What other differences are there?
Structure.
What's the structure? Yeah.
Well, the second one is, well, better. You know, it flows in the readings.
Okay, it does flow better. Actually, we will have another lecture on paragraph and sentence coherence titled Go with the Flow. And we will talk about flow. Okay, let's look at the next set of passages. So, you know, we're beginning to get some differences. Okay, here's a difference here. This is the passage you just looked at. I've put verbs in red and nouns in yellow. So where this one says it was found, this one says we found. Where this one at the end of the sentence says was not obtained, this one says the Department of Energy did not obtain. Something is needed, somebody needs. Something must be established becomes established. May be gathered becomes gathered. More interestingly, a determination of redirection is permitted becomes you can determine how to redirect.
Passive and active voice? Yeah.
The red is the passive and active voice, about which more in a minute. You want to take a stab at determination and determine?
You can take that.
Okay. Let's look at the next one, the next pair. Here's the next pair where this half of the room got the top, that half of the room got the bottom, and the second one, this half was better at remembering this one, and you guys were worse at remembering this one. What's the difference? Several researchers have stated that when we consider the Custodes-Linkoff operation in which we don't drain the retina, we must first assess how mobile the detached retina is. We can determine its mobility in two ways. First, how deep is the subretinal fluid? If it's shallow, then the detached retina has little room in which to move. This one's embarrassing, I have a typo in here. It has been stated that the assessment of the mobility of the detached retina is a factor when the non-drainage retinal detachment operation of Custodes-Linkoff is being given consideration. This is a medical journal, right? You're reading something from the Journal of the American Medical Association. Determination of mobility of the detached retina is made on the basis of two factors. The depth of the subretinal fluid is the first to be given consideration. If the subretinal fluid is shallow, then little room is given for actual movement of the detached retina. What are the differences?
I found the same as the before one.
The same as before?
Yeah, it's not drained to the non-drainage.
Okay, so non-drainage is not drained. Drainage becomes drain. Yep.
Determine is determination.
Okay, so determine, yeah, we can determine is where you perform, where is that?
Third line at the end.
Yeah, determination of the mobility. So determination becomes a verb determine. Very good. Other differences?
Move to the movement.
Which one?
The last one, move.
The last one, move. Movement becomes, which it can't move. Yep, those are all specific. Ma'am? Very good.
The top one is more concise.
The top one is more concise. You're right. In what way is it more concise?
Well, just reading it, I feel like it's directed to people who know the topic or are more comfortable with it, and it's more, in my perception, it's more academic and more
like supposed to
This one?
sound more like I don't know if it's like more professional almost.
I would say this one is more professional.
Yeah, that's what
But when you look at professional journals, you're mostly going to get this, sir.
I think the first one is like more active, and the second one is more passive.
Okay, so this one is more active because you assess, somebody is assessing as opposed to when an assessment is being made. Something is being given consideration as opposed to when you consider. Sir?
I think that like on the first one, especially considering the time of the day and the kind of like, you know, the first one is more like related to what we're doing, so I remember more because it was more related to like resources, allocation, and you know, like what we're doing in sustainability. But the second one, all of a sudden, it was like present more for too technical. So then you're like, oh my gosh, and then the words were just hitting you like one after another. So it's just like, okay, I mean, you know, even if you were interested, you were kind of like tired and whatever. Now, if it would have been stated like the first one, more for a general audience, I would remember it better.
Yeah, yeah.
So what does that say when I remembered more of this second one than the other one?
More operations?
Yeah, I mean, you're the guy who's medicated, you're asking me? So, my point here, then, we have the same, the woman here picked up a lot of this. We have the same set of changes. Something has been stated, someone, so nobody stated it, but something has been stated, people stated. Instead of something being given consideration, we consider. Instead of non-drainage retinal detachment operation, it's an operation in which we don't drain the retina. Instead of determination of the mobility, we can determine. So, verbs and noun phrases. Very simple stuff. You said it. Passive voice. And let me explain what it is and why this is important. Passive voice is when you take a sentence in the active voice. The teacher explained the passive voice. The teacher bored the class. And you turn it into the passive voice. The passive voice was explained by the teacher. Or in the passive voice, you can drop off the whodunit and have an it. The passive voice was explained. Minor change. English teachers always complain about the passive voice. Anybody here ever heard of Chomskyan transformational generative grammars? Okay, Noam Chomsky, the famous linguist and leftist radical. Back in the 60s, Chomsky came up with a theory of grammar. And I'll give you a very simple piece of it. We're going to talk about two theories of grammar tonight. Chomskyan transformational generative grammar says, when you process language, every utterance, every sentence you hear has what he calls a deep structure. A structure that is the structure that the human brain processes. You can transform that structure into various different sentences, what he calls the surface structure. A deep structure, which is what your brain processes. A surface structure, which is what you hear. So you can hear the active sentence. I can say, the teacher explained the passive voice. Same thing, the passive voice was explained by the teacher. Two sentences that you hear, surface structures. They mean exactly the same thing. But to get the meaning, that's what it means. To get it, as you are processing the language, you have to say, okay, the verb is explained. This one is an unnecessary auxiliary verb, so I've got to drop that verb. The teacher was the one who did it, so I've got to take this, I've got to drop the preposition by, I've got to move this to the front of the sentence, and the subject of this sentence is really the thing that he explained, so it goes over there. So you've got to drop a word, move a noun phrase, move a noun phrase. You've got to do 4 or 5 cognitive processing steps to get to the sentence that you then understand. Back when I was in college, I actually took computer programming, but computers were slow, and it was important to have a program that didn't use more memory than necessary. You could do the same thing in the least number of steps because computers didn't have gigabytes of memory. lesson here, purely functional. When you are reading those sentences, this is what your brain processes. This is what your ear hears. You have to unconsciously, as you're reading, perform 4 or 5 cognitive moves to get from here to here before you can get to the content of the sentence. It slows you down. It's harder to read and understand. We looked at the passages. You guys had trouble when they were in passive voice. You couldn't read them and understand them and remember them. This is why. Come on. So it was found becomes we found. My next one is even harder. Anybody know what a nominalization is? A nominalization is when you turn a verb that has action into a noun. So instead of I assessed, I performed an assessment. So you take a verb, you turn it into a noun. Usually you put an empty verb in front of it and add a suffix. So investigate, we conducted an investigation. I expect, I have an expectation. Instead of I paid, I made a payment. I performed an assessment. Instead of evaluate, there is a need for an evaluation. And when you process that information, like the passive voice, you have to say, oh, those verbs are empty. Get rid of them. Conduct, and just forget that. I don't need that. And whatever it is on the end of this verb, the suffix is, I've got to throw that away. I've got to turn that nominalization, conduct an investigation, into a verb, investigate. And you've got to do all that while you're reading. While you're trying to get the content, your brain has to move the syntax and sentences around. And it slows you down. It's harder. It takes more time and energy. If you do, I've been reading a book that Cagle gave me about computer modeling. It's called data friction. The problems with processing data, building computer models. You've got data friction in your sentences. They're harder to read and understand. Sir?
That's why in the Army, when you write orders or you do like any kind of exercise, that's the way that you write passive. Long and excessive and stupid, but that's the way they kind of write it. So.
Yeah, and I will get to that in just a second. I actually will talk about, not necessarily the Army, but you're actually on task here. So, conceptual kudzu. This action is needed so that a determination of redirection is permitted on a timely basis when weather conditions change. Somebody, buttons are too close together. Somebody needs, so we've got, with the passive, we don't know who's doing it. One of you said there's more information. Yeah, the who that's doing stuff. You know who's doing it as opposed to just something happening. So a determination of redirection is permitted. You get rid of the is permitted, somebody can determine and redirect. And whenever you run into things like on a timely basis at this point in time, you're reading military or political talks, you don't need that. It's just empty words. Somebody who wants to sound smart and important. As an English teacher, it literally sets my teeth on edge. But it's useless verbiage. It doesn't get you anywhere. Okay, next one. My last piece of grammar. In the 80s, linguist from UCLA named Charles Fillmore invented what he called case grammar. And Fillmore said, like Chomsky in deep structure, when we process a proposition, a sentence, a proposition, we are looking for, he had 7, I've reduced it to 4 for simplicity's sake. There are 4 cases, pieces, categories of information your brain wants. An agent, who did it? A person or a thing doing the action of the sentence. A predicate, a main verb. What's the action? What happened? A patient, somebody that received or was the object of that action. An instrument, what they used, the means, the medium that an agent used, predicate, to take the action. So Professor Herndl, an agent, mesmerized, the verb. The class, the patient. How did I do it? With a lecture on grammar. What you hear is Professor Herndl mesmerized the class with a lecture on grammar. If some of these cases, pieces, are missing, your brain wants to fill them in. It wants to know who did it, what did they do, how did he do it, who done it. Fillmore will also tell you that it's better, it works better, it's easier to process if you get the who, what they did, to whom, and how in that order. This sentence is easier to read. Professor Herndl mesmerized the class with a lecture on grammar. Then this one. Using a lecture on grammar, Professor Herndl mesmerized the class. The woman with the curly hair back there said, you have to wait to the end of the surprise. You know, don't put the verb at the very end. You know, tell me what's happening. You know, unless you're writing Latin or German, the verb doesn't go at the end. Come on. Hello. Move. Next. All right. Oh, helps if you don't mess with the batteries while you talk. Sort of helps with the batteries if you don't.
It was doing that earlier, that's, I don't know.
Yeah, it's mesmerized. Thank you. Good catch, dude.
That was a nice joke.
Can we
solid
advance it?
10.
Can we advance it manually?
Yeah, I'll come do that.
Huh. These are brand new batteries. It can't be dead.
I think it was on in the case, so it might have green then.
Okay.
It might have.
So you'll give me the next one.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to have
No,
you
you're
do
fine.
this for me, dude. Okay, so what does that mean? We've gone from cognitive processing and 2 theories of grammar to writing sentences. Very simple. First principle of clarity. And I'm trying not to be an English teacher and say, don't do this because you'll sound like a cretin. I'm trying to say, what English teachers say, right? You know, if you don't write like me, you're a cretin. If you want people to be able to understand and remember what you write, and let's call that clear, then there's some lessons to be drawn from this. So when you're writing, tell me who is doing it, who's the agent. You know, in the